Let's now move on. This one's going to be a doozy. Let's move on to the third main topic today. And the third main topic today comes to us from Terrance G, who writes, "Hey, John. Okay," now he wrote this yesterday, clearly. "I'm not sure about the time zone difference, but I think as I am writing this, you're literally on your way to the premiere or watching the movie right now," talking about Avengers Endgame. "So I wanted to get this to you early. How was Endgame? Tell me now. I need to know more than I need air. Speak now." All right, Terrance, thank you so much for the enthusiasm and the energy. Okay, so yes, last night, Ann and I went to the Avengers Endgame premiere at the LA Convention Center. It was amazing. I gotta tell you this too. So we took a limo there, so we got to go to the limo drop-off areas. And they were pulling up 2 cars at a time. People get out, 2 cars, people get out of the 2 cars. So we go there. And our car pulls up with one car in front of us. So out of the 2 cars pulling up, we're the one behind. And of course, the security people come over, open the doors, we get out, and Chris Hemsworth gets out of the car in front of us. And Anna's just like, and I'm just like, and he was great. He stood around, took pictures with everybody. It was wonderful. Went in. Now, I should mention this. I told people, hey, we're going to be there at the premiere, blah, blah. If you catch us on the live stream, send us a screenshot, because normally people send us screenshots. But because of the way we went in, we never actually went out to the area where they were filming everything for the live red carpet stream. So nobody saw us because we went in a back way. But anyway, I didn't know that at the time, so my apologies for that. So we went in, watched the movie. The energy was palpable. The excitement was through the roof. Everybody was very excited to see it. And I'll tell you what, before we get to my specific thoughts, I'm going to tell you what, the overwhelming thoughts on Endgame coming out were through the roof positive. Like through the roof positive. Let's take a look at some of the things being said. Eric Davis over at Fandango writes, "Avengers Endgame is a masterful epic, a true culmination of 22 films that not only concludes the story, but expands upon it. You'll learn more about the other movies while this one unfolds. If Infinity War is the brawn, Endgame is the brains. And wow, what an ending." Angie J. Hahn, I believe from Mashable, writes, "Avengers Endgame is an immensely satisfying payoff, not just to Infinity War, but to all the films that came before. This is why the MCU, and I say this as somebody that was not especially enamored with Infinity War." Eric Eisenberg from Cinema Blend writes, "This can't be understated. Avengers Endgame is everything you want it to be and more. I am absolutely floored. A perfect reflection of the last 11 years that pays off everything in the best way possible. Without question, my new favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe film. I'm stunned." And then Brandon Davis writes, "I just can't remember a cinematic experience like the one I just had with Avengers Endgame. Simply blown away. I like that the movie was made for every Marvel fan everywhere." So, and we could go on. There are more. There are lots more of those type. That was the general consensus. A few qualifiers that a few people were mentioning here and there, but overall, the movie was an explosive success with people. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So what were my responses? Well, there's still a review embargo until 3 o'clock this afternoon, but I can share with you what my social media posts were. I put out 3 specifically. I put out a couple social media posts last night. Starting off with my social media post I put up on Instagram, I wrote this: Avengers, and I'll explain it in a second here. "Avengers Endgame is quite good. The first 2 acts are a mixed bag of pros and cons, but the final hour is probably the best hour in any movie we'll have this year. I wish it was a little more even, but really enjoyable overall." Then I put the same thing up on Twitter. On Twitter, I wrote, "Avengers Endgame, a mediocre first 2 hours that is equal parts cool moments and problematic moments, that ends with a final hour that's an absolute magnificent geek wet dream. I need to see it again tomorrow," that's today, "to solidify my thoughts." Now, one other thing I kind of wrote, and I'll talk about this here first, that I put up, I said, probably the most satisfying thing about Endgame, besides the entirety of the last hour, is the mix of things that do and don't happen from what you swore would happen, and that do and don't happen from what you swore would never happen. It's a nice mix that keeps you on your toes. And I want to talk about that first here, Rob, is this. We all went into Endgame with a bunch of predictions, the pro and con predictions. The pro predictions of these things will absolutely happen in here. And then our con predictions of these are the things that will never happen in this. And much like Infinity War was, a bunch of things that we swore would happen did and did not happen. And then a bunch of things we swore and I swore would never happen, sure enough didn't, and some of them sure enough did. And it was enough that it was a mix of those things that you were expecting and weren't expecting, both pro and con, that kept you satisfied because the things you kind of thought would happen are happening, but it kept you on your toes and surprising you because there are things a lot of people thought would happen that I said wouldn't and they didn't. But then there were a lot of things I said wouldn't happen and do. And it was that great mix of things that really keeps you on your toes. I like that a lot about Infinity War, and I liked a lot about it here. I will say this. Overall, I quite like this movie. It is my third favorite Avengers film. Now, you all know I quite like Avengers Age of Ultron, but I would rank them right now as the first Avengers is still my favorite. Infinity War is my second favorite. Endgame is my third favorite. And then Age of Ultron, which I still quite like a lot, is my fourth favorite. I thought the first 2 hours of this film, as I kind of mentioned in my social media posts, and I'm going to go into no details here at all, but I thought the first 2 hours of the film, like I said in my posts, were a mixed bag of some really cool things that happened, but also a few problematic things that happened. So it was kind of even going through the first 2 hours, right? Like there's some bad things would happen, but there's some really good things would happen. Just as an example, I won't give any details at all. There's a running gag involving Thor in this movie that I thought was really funny at first, but to me got really tired really fast. But you'll see what I mean when you see the movie. Anyway, so it was a little bit of a mix. And then you get to the final hour of the movie. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is going to be, and I know we're early in the year, this is going to be the single greatest hour of any movie that comes out this year. It might arguably be the greatest hour of any comic book movie ever. Now, you know me, I like my sports analogies, right? So imagine this. Hockey game is 3 periods, right? And for me, the first 2 periods was a tie. I mean, there were some pros, there were some cons. I was watching it, I liked it, but it was pros and cons, kind of a tie. Come see, come saw. And then in the third period, your team explodes and scores 16 goals in the third period. That's what Avengers Endgame is. And now I think a lot of people who are coming out of it, I don't want to make excuses for why other people are saying the things they do, whatever. But I think a lot of it is that last hour of the movie is so indescribably good. Like the first thing I wrote in my tweet was, it is a magnificent geek's wet dream. I am honestly, Rob, when we get to the last hour of this movie, I'm going to move 1 seat over from you because I don't know that anybody should be within flailing distance of you when the last hour. And don't get me wrong, like I said, I have some problematic areas in the first 2 hours as well. But those are balanced out. There is some really good stuff in the first couple hours. But for me, this movie is all about the landing. It's all about the last hour. Now, I know I'm being very, very vague because the review embargo doesn't live till 3. I'm just giving my general impression and elaborating what I wrote in my social media post. I will put up my actual, more fleshed out review, non-spoiler, later today at 3 o'clock. But like I said in the tweet, it's all about the last hour. And it's not like the first 2 hours are crap. They're okay. The first 2 hours to me are okay, some good, some bad. But the last hour is, simply speaking, everything John Schnepp ever wanted to see in a comic book movie. If that's the terminology and the way I can phrase it to really make it hit home for you guys, it is everything you've ever wanted to see in a comic book movie. I was gasping. I was cheering. I was jumping out of my chair. It is just... Oh God. I mean, what a way to end the 22 film saga. So anyway, there you go. Overall, a lot of people, to me, it's not my favorite MCU movie of all time. It's not my favorite comic book movie of all time. It's okay. It's okay for the first couple hours, and then it just kicks into this wet dream fantasy that we've all had about what a comic book movie could be. And it crushes that last part. And I think everybody, particularly because that real strong part comes in the final act, I think everybody's going to walk out of this thing really satisfied. I think everybody's going to walk out of this really satisfied. And, you know, you're reading these online reactions. People are saying they laugh, they cry. I've been telling you guys this whole time, cry time. And if you're reading all these tweets out there, everybody's saying, I cried, cry time. Like, I'm telling you what. And you're going to see there are a couple of my predictions that were bang on the money. You're going to see a couple of my predictions were way off the mark. And I think we're all going to have that same experience. But anyway, guys, that's the general first impressions we've been getting from social media, including my social media and everybody else. What do you guys think? Now, look, let me say this here quick. I know that what a lot of people wanted was to see what the script said was that I was supposed to get on social media last night and say this is the greatest thing ever. I know that's what the script said. I was supposed to get on social media last night and just talk about how great everything is. But you guys who watch me know that that's not me if that's not how I actually feel. All I can do is give my honest opinion on something. You guys will also remember coming out of The Last Jedi at the premiere, everybody wrote and raved about how this was maybe the greatest Star Wars movie ever, whereas my tweet was like, this is great, but I hated this part, and I didn't like what they did with Benicio del Toro, and I didn't like what they did with Rose and Finn, and because that's how I felt. I like to give a little bit of context to what I write. And I know there were some people, oh my God, Rob, inevitably, as soon as I wrote, like, let me pull this up again, the two in particular. Avengers Endgame is quite good. The first two acts are a mixed bag of pros and cons, but the final hour is probably the best hour any movie will have this year. Wish it was a little more even, but really enjoyable overall. Last one, Avengers Endgame, mediocre. First 2 hours is equal parts cool moments and problematic, but it ends with a final hour that's an absolute magnificent geek wet dream. Need to see it again tomorrow to solidify my thoughts. And of course, inevitably, I started getting a ton of messages from people saying, John, why didn't you like Endgame? And at this point, I don't know what to do but to throw my arms up and to say, oh, whatever. So look, bottom line, I really enjoyed this film. The last hour is one of the greatest, probably the greatest hour in any comic book movie ever. Do I wish the first 2 hours were a little bit more like that? Yes. But overall, it's a really solid film. It's very enjoyable. You might be in theaters. I've never seen this happen before, Rob. You might be in a theater that is literally on its feet during the last hour of this movie. You might, like, I've never seen that. You only see that in live events like concerts or sporting it. You might actually find yourself in a theater where everybody's going to be on their feet. I mean, it's just like that. Anyway, Rob, you heard me going on and on. You've read some social media stuff going on.
Yeah,
What's your response to it?
Look, to me, I just have one question for you.
Okay. I'll see if maybe I can answer.
Well, the question that you talk about the first 2 hours.
Right.
Are the first 2 hours necessary in order to achieve that final hour? Like, does it all sort of work together in order to, whether you I don't know if it's a slow burn, a fast burn, the different tonal qualities you seem to be alluding to, but without those first 2 hours, would that third hour be the ultimate geek fanboy comic book fantasy that we've all dreamed of?
Let me say, I think some of it was. I'm going to be as vague as possible.
Sure.
Here.
No,
there's also some of it that was not necessarily to build towards the third act. Some of it was to build and to be nostalgia and reminiscing of things that came previously in those first 2 hours. What they were going for was right. I just don't know, but to me, my reaction was a little bit mixed in the first 2 acts about what was effective and what wasn't effective. And so to me, it was a zero sum. It was
Sure.
it was a tie game for me going into the third period, going into the third act of the film. But I will say that would the third act have been the greatest hour in comic book movie history had it not been for the first two? I don't know. That's you know what? I need to watch it again, which I'm going to do in a few hours. And really, that's a great question, Rob. That's a really, really good question. I got to think. I'm going to have that in mind when we're watching the film.
I mean, I'm always curious because a lot of the time when people say things are slow or uneven, for me, I like build up and story, and I like what they're.
But notice I didn't say slow.
No, you didn't say.
No, I didn't say slow.
But so I'm always curious because some people, it's different strokes for different folks, and again. I think a lot of it, let me ask you this. Here's another question. Do you think if you have a lifelong relationship with first reading the comic books, watching the animation, the series, the animated series as you grew up, and then you started watching the MCU, that if you have that kind of a lifelong association with these characters, that the film might work better?
My guess is no, because I really found it disassociated from the comics.
Okay.
As much as the MCU has been really traditionally up until this point, right? It's kind of been like that. I got to tell you, one of the coolest things about this event last night was seeing all the stars and how much the stars of these films truly love each other.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just on stage. Afterwards at the party, every time I came across cast from the film, they were all with each other and with other cast members and hugging and laughing and crying and stuff like that. And you know, Robert Downey Jr. was hanging out, and obviously you saw Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau there. Incredibly, those are the two guys that kind of started the whole thing. But you know, whether it's Scarlett Johansson with Karen Gillan, like hanging out and hugging, even though how many scenes did those two have in the entire film? Hardly any. You saw Brie Larson with. There was a moment, Brie Larson with Chris Hemsworth, they were hugging and laughing and blah, blah. I know a lot of people are trying to make drama out of that, but that was there last night. It was really interesting seeing that. It felt like an event because you had this group of people that had worked this long and this hard, and Kevin Feige was the star of the night. Like when they introduced everybody, big cheers and everything, but it's really neat to see that when they then said Kevin Feige, the whole place is on its feet. Standing ovation for Kevin Feige. And I remember going back a number of years when Kevin Feige was the unknown name. It's like Josh Whedon, yeah! And our head president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige? Now today, Kevin Feige's the rock star. And it's kind of neat to see that. So...
Well, I have to say, I watched the live feed. I watched the entire live feed of Arrivals.
Wasn't it good?
It was really good, and I have to say, it was very funny seeing Scarlett Johansson. They've broken it up into clips, so you can watch it on YouTube. But when Scarlett Johansson met Chris...
Evans?
No, Star-Lord.
Pratt. Yeah,
Chris
yeah.
Pratt.
Oh, when she was interviewing him.
And it was so funny. And she's like, yes, I just came back from the world tour. And Chris Pratt's like, oh, you went to Shanghai, you went to the Ukraine, you went to this. She goes, no, we didn't go to any of those places.
No, I didn't go to any of those.
And he was like, yeah, I was just at home. You know, and it was funny to see how the characters that have been snapped, that did not survive the snapping, who were not on the press tour, who are not on the poster, they're not, and how they're like, yeah, you know, we didn't get to do any of that. And it was a very funny sort of a running joke, and all the different characters sort of played, the actors played that up in different ways, and I thought it was great. And when they were interviewing, it was Favreau, and then Robert Downey Jr. jumped on stage, and then
Gwyneth Paltrow
Chris
came up.
It was just... You know, for this fan, I mean, I don't normally watch these things. I watched the Jedi, the Star Wars red carpets, and I watched the Marvel red carpets like this, and they're so much fun, and you just feel like,
but you know,
wow.
You know what the cringe moment of the night was, though, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so whenever they've always got these same hosts on these red carpets,
yeah,
and the one dude, there's this one big, he's got to be, I don't know who it is. I'm guessing a former pro athlete. He's got these long dreads, and he's really quite good. He's got a great charisma, but a lot of these people, they're like, hi, we're Hollywood hosts. And anyway, there's this one girl who was doing it, and I'm being an asshole. Anyway, one of the hosts, it was just the one I'm not particularly fond of. I don't want to say anything mean because I'm being a jerk.
This is the Kobe Smulders.
Oh my God. But there's this one that me and Ann always notice, like, oh, yeah, we're not the biggest fans of this one, but whatever. Colby Smulders comes on stage. And this host looks, oh, and now we're joined by Evangeline Lilly. And Colby Smulders like, I'm Colby Smulders. And it was in the theater, because before the movie starts, when you're in the premiere, they're playing the live red carpet stream up on the big screen. And we already had about 1,000 of us were in the theater already, because it was getting close to start time. When Colby got on stage, she goes, and we're joined by Evangeline Lilly. And I'm Colby. The whole theater was like, oh, it was the awkward moment of the night.
But Colby, man, she rescued that.
She did. She played
was
it like a boss.
That was one of the classiest, coolest moments. I mean, if you don't respect a woman after that, she's already misrecognized. She turned around and said, "We've been watching you in the car. You guys did such a great job. You're still doing a great job." That was one of the sweetest, coolest things. Mad respect for what she did.
By the way,
unbelievable.
Good Canadian kid. Good Canadian. Just want to point that out. Colby Smulders, good Canadian kid. Just want to point that out.
She was, I mean, that was the epitome of class. That moment's going to go down in my mind in Hollywood history. I can't wait to meet her one day and tell her that as soon as I get her hot toy that I'm missing from my collection.